So are you good enough? Are you a great speaker? Or you think you can improve even more? I can improve even more. There is no finish line. We can always get better. If you practice enough and a lot, you can overcompensate by practicing. You will not fail. We all have time. We all have 24 hours.
Absolutely.
It's all about prioritization.
Welcome, Danish, and thank you for coming here today. I'm excited about the topic we're going to talk about as well, and for you to share your story from where you started and how you got to where you are and what you've created, which I'm going to let you explain to the audience of what that is. So today we'll be talking about the fear of speaking, but not necessarily public speaking. We'll probably branch off into that as well, but also job interviews, one-to-one conversations. It is a hot topic, and it always has been. There is a lot of fear with people speaking to each other sometimes, and with seniors and publicly as well. So I'm excited about today. So
I'm excited too. I know
yeah.
both of us are in the world of development, learning and development, helping other people achieve their best potential.
Yeah.
And today we're just going to focus on that speaking element, which is a skill. And as you said, we're not just talking about public speaking in terms of going in front of a stage or speaking in front of 10, 100,000 people. We're literally talking about one-on-ones, that job interview, you going to networking events, any of those skills, any of those environments, this skill can help, and it opens up opportunity.
So Danish, give a bit of an introduction to who you are and what's brought you on this journey of where you are right now.
I am the co-founder and CEO of Orai, which is one of the best apps on the App Store that helps you improve your communication skills. Now, how does it do that? You simply open your app, hit record, practice, and Orai listens and actually gives you feedback within real time. So there's no human in the loop. It's all AI based. It counts your ums and uhs, how fast or slow you speak, your energy, your facial expressions, and much more. And I created this with my co-founders, Paritosh and Asim, because we felt that fear ourselves. If you asked me 5 years ago, or if you watched me speak, I was not like this. This is something that I personally have spent trial and error to get to where I am. And it took me years of practice, of improvement, of trying everything out there, from Toastmasters to books to watching Udemy, LinkedIn Learning, and many, many things. And I thought, why don't we create a way that's the fastest, the most efficient to go from 0 to 1, and you leapfrog instead of you going through my journey and trying everything out there. And that is why we created Orai.
Excellent. And I have had a little look into Orai. I know when we spoke previously as well, I think it's definitely a huge part of where I am. Obviously, I'm based in India, like we discussed before, and for the organisation I work for, but many other organisations, that is something that will be an issue for some people, is accent and picking up on the ers. And even I'm an English speaker, and I still and it's so, yeah, it's an exciting app. It's a very innovative app as well. I've not seen anything like it. How did you evolve from, so you created the app, and that, what sparked you to create the app was because of your own experience? Is that correct?
Yeah. And I think it was this one moment in my life where, as an engineer, I never thought I needed to do presentations, but I did. And the reality is, if you're going into the real world, doesn't matter if you're a salesperson or client-facing people, everyone else outside of that, you have to present, you have to speak. Yeah. I did not know that. So when I had to present, my manager pulled me aside and she's like, Danish, you can be the smartest engineer, but if you don't know how to present confidently and clearly, you're putting a glass ceiling on your head. You'll never become a manager. You'll never become a leader. And I said, what do I do? And she said, go join Toastmasters. And I joined it, went there religiously week after week after week, and realized that this is actually a learnable skill, that you're not born a great speaker or a great communicator. You can learn the skill. I'm a product of that you can learn this and be confident in any scenario. And I wanted to bring that to everyone. I would tell people to go to Toastmasters, but sometimes people would be like, no, I'm busy, I can't go all the way there. So I thought, how do we bring that to you in a scalable manner? And that was the inception.
How long did you Toastmasters for?
A long time. I would say before I created Orai, I had already been going to it for a year.
Yeah.
And then I, of course, continued it after. we started a chapter in our college at Drexel University. So I was the president of that chapter. We just started it. It was fun.
Now you've got this application that helps people improve their communication. Let's talk a little bit about the fear then for other people, because and the great thing is with what you've created, you've gone through that fear and that pain a little bit yourself, so you can really relate to it. And that, you know what, the same thing for me as well. I remember when I went into learning and development, for the first time I realized, oh man, I've just got the job and I've now got to stand in front of people and talk. And I'm not talking like hundreds of people all at once, but it was standing up in front of people, sometimes 20, 30, 40 people. But I'd gone from somebody who was a hands-on guy. I'd only spent a little bit of time in an office environment to very soon kind of being in front of people. And I remember being very nervous and doubted myself. You know, I wouldn't say I'm the most academic of people. So, you know, you got all of these things running through limiting beliefs. And so let's talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that. And what sort of advice would you give to people? Where would you start?
So the starting point is know that you're not alone. So Richard just told us all what he went through. And we know how good of a communicator Richard is. So imagine if someone like Richard went through the same things, those two, three things. Richard said he was nervous. He said he was self-doubting. He
Yeah.
had these limiting beliefs. These are all real things. Now, that's the first step. Let's realize that not everyone, but many, many people do have that. Now let's try and make these weaknesses into superpowers. How do we do that? Now that you have accepted that everyone has that and it's totally human, it's totally natural to have that, now let's think of working on that. Now, why are you nervous? Some of the reasons why people are nervous going in front of others is either fear of failure, either fear of not impressing people to the mark or the standard that you might have set to yourself, which, by the way, we are our biggest critique and we score ourselves very harshly. So if what we think might have been a C may have been an A for your audience. So we need to change those thresholds that we have inside of
Yeah.
ourselves. You shouldn't be your biggest bully. We need to change that. So that's what the things you need to work on. So this nervousness, this fear of failing can be removed by first reducing the threshold for what is good enough. And that's just you telling your mind. And maybe it's watching a video of you presenting something and maybe asking a peer to look at it and say, how was it? I thought I sucked. What was your opinion? As soon as you do that, your peer's like, Danish, that was awesome. I loved your messaging. I loved your energy. And you didn't use so many ums and ahs. And then you're like, really? That was good? So you do this once, twice, or thrice. So you reduce your threshold for what's bad and what's good. And then the second thing you can do to avoid nervousness, which is a result of the fear of failure, is practice. If you practice enough and a lot, you can overcompensate by practicing. You will not fail. When I did my TEDx talk, I knew I needed to make it perfect. There was no room for failure. This is a one-time and done thing. Those 8 to 10 minutes, I had to script every single word, every single second. I practiced every single gesture of mine and how I'm going to walk on the stage. It was a performance. And I knew I couldn't fail over there. So I overcompensated by practicing around 100, 160 times or so. But not every presentation scenario or speaking scenario is a TEDx type thing. Many times you're just on one-on-one. And maybe you practice once, that's it. So overcompensate by practicing. So if you do those two things, A, reduce your threshold of what is good and bad, and two, practice, your nervousness will go away. Guarantee you.
One of the things that you mentioned there, the start of that was about recording yourself. And I remember the first time I saw myself, it's such a powerful thing to do. And I think it's something that we don't do enough of, especially when it's not just, you know, you don't have to just do that when you're delivering a presentation or you're a trainer or a presenter. Or, you can also do that for like you mentioned, or like we talked about at the minute, for an interview scenario. If you were going into an interview, you could record, you could kind of do a little bit of a role play, even if it was to yourself, so you know what you look like and how you're coming across. That's definitely a powerful little tool that people need to use more of.
Yeah. And I still don't understand why people are afraid of listening back to themselves. This is something I hear often.
Yeah.
Danish, I don't want to record myself. I don't like my voice. I don't like the sound of my
Yeah.
voice. I cringe. I'm like, why? So by listening to yourself, you're going to avoid that, and you will make it normal for yourself to listen back. And it's very important. Like, I'm happy we're recording this show, because after that, I can go back and I can hear back myself how I did. So
Yep.
I know what can I improve on next time I do a podcast or a show. We are always improving. There is no finish line. There's never like, oh, Danish, so are you good enough? Are you a great speaker? Or you think you can improve even more? I can improve even more. There is no finish line. We can always get better.
Yep.
And think of it like a knife. You have to continuously sharpen it. Otherwise, it gets blunt if you don't use it, if you don't practice it.
That's the same for any skill, isn't it? Any personal, well, not even just personal development skills, but if you don't use it, you lose it, as they say.
Any
And
skill.
yeah, any skill whatsoever. But we'll talk about the public speaking part, but I don't think this is a topic that I generally hear a lot about being discussed. There's a lot of people that do have that one-to-one fear as well, and in that kind of setting. So tell us a little bit about that. And
At the beginning, we mentioned speaking happens everywhere. It doesn't just have to be on a stage, it could be one on one. And I work with people, and I've heard people who are completely confident speaking in front of 1,000 people, put on a stage. But when it comes to one on one or team meetings, like 1 to 5 people, they get nervous and they get scared. Again, why do you get scared? In one on one settings, I've seen that the biggest reason people get scared are because they're underprepared. It's not a fear of failure, because you don't have to present something. But when you're in a one-on-one scenario, it could be a job interview, it could be a team update meeting or a feedback meeting within your team members. You're not fearing failure, but what happens there is underpreparedness. And that's totally normal, because when we look at our calendars, it's back to back meetings. We don't get time to chill and to do actual work. So we're just going meeting to meeting to meeting, and we're like, oh, it is 3 p.m. now. Okay, what meeting do I have now? Oh, I have a meeting with Richard. Okay, let's task switch, context switch, and now let's get into it. And completely we are underprepared. So then we start hesitating, we start getting like choppy, like, uh, so we were talking about, yeah. And now you're looking unprofessional, you're not looking confident, and then it's a cycle. So the biggest suggestion I would give for these one-on-one scenarios is just prepare yourself. The way I do it is in the morning, have a very good and clear understanding on what's on your calendar. What are your one-on-ones? And just visualize them for 30 seconds each. That's it. If you can visualize for 30 seconds each how that meeting would go, and you have in your mind what the outcome is about the meeting. And we need to remember, meetings are about outcome. It's not about just about spending time together. What is that outcome I want to have in that meeting? If you can visualize that before your day starts, you're doing yourself a blessing, because you're not going to get time in the day. You're going to be rushing back to back to back. So that's the biggest thing I would suggest in a one-on-one setting.
yeah, I think it's great advice. Funny enough, I was speaking to a colleague today about some of this stuff as well, about meetings and making sure that there's outcomes at the end of the meeting. I know it's kind of it's a little bit off topic. It's got similarities about speaking and
Since we are going off topic, meetings is a dangerous thing. It's like a rabbit hole. It just sucks people in, and the next thing you know, your half the day is gone. And with remote work, what we have seen is a rise of asynchronous work, async work. What that means is people can actually continue collaborating without having to sync one-on-one or 10 people together in a Zoom like meeting. You can send audio notes, WhatsApp audio notes, Slack audio notes. You can record a Loom video of a screen share of that presentation. So you don't have to open a Zoom room and come in and present for like 15 minutes and then hear what everyone is thinking. No, avoid that time coming together. Instead, just record your presentation that is 15 minutes long and just send it ahead of schedule, so people can actually watch it in their own time, maybe while they're eating breakfast. Maybe if you're a slow speaker, they can play it at 2x the speed. They can revert back and go back, so that when you actually meet, it is impactful. So
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of asynchronous work. If you are listening to this and your work has not brought in asynchronous work, find a consultant, Google, YouTube it. You need to implement some of those.
Yeah, look, I I think that's a great little tip. Something that we've not done as an organisation. Again, we use WhatsApp as well at times, so there will be kind of audios, but I think what you're talking is the next level. It certainly would save a lot of time as well instead of having to have the meetings. But
Yeah, and
so
we're all complaining about time. We're always complaining about time. Like, I don't have time. I don't have time for my kids. I don't have time for my work. I don't have time for my family. This
yeah,
is one great way of getting 2-3 hours back every single week.
yeah.
And preparation isn't something that should take 10 minutes. Literally, it can take 30 seconds or 1 minute.
Just having some reflective time. The other thing is,
Yeah.
I know we're talking about meetings a bit here, but I quite like the topic. Is when your diary is just stacked and there is no gap. So I'm really consciously now trying to get into that effort of having at least 5 minutes as a minimum in between a meeting before another one's scheduled. It just gives you that little bit of time to reflect on what's happened.
And it's
Otherwise,
so easy. It's so easy to get a 5 minute thing just by going into your Google Calendar or your Outlook settings and making sure that the default time is a 25-minute instead of a 30-minute meeting.
yeah.
And Google Calendar will do it for you automatically. Now, all of a sudden, you're in a meeting and you're like, oh, my meeting is about to end. So you force yourself to end it versus you're like, oh, we have 5 more minutes. Let's fill it up.
Let's go back to the one-to-one. Obviously, the preparation is absolutely key. If there's somebody that does who practices, or somebody who's new to having one-to-one meetings, and there's still some fear there because it won't just be that, it won't always be the preparation. There'll be some nerves that come from somewhere else. What sort of tips could you give somebody that wants to deliver themselves better?
Practice is something that I have found many people don't do. So then I go to the second thing, which is okay, forget practice. You don't have time to do it. Instead, now let's focus on just being ever ready. How are you ever ready? Is by going through a public speaking course, either going through Toastmasters or going through our app, Orai, which has a 4-week course. If you do that, then you're ever ready for any scenario. Then even if you don't practice, you will sound confident. You will do good. That is what I call the foundational level. If you have your foundational level good, then you can present, speak, converse in any scenario, and you will do good.
You're right. A lot of people will say they don't have time to practice. That's always the one, isn't it? How
Yeah.
good do you want to be? Isn't it? The next question. How good do you want to be? If you really wanted to be good, you would find time to practice. But
We all have time. We all
Yeah.
have 24 hours. It's
Absolutely.
all about prioritization. When I look at some of the most successful people in the world, they do not use time as an excuse. Find people that they don't use time as an excuse. They know what their priorities are. They either say no, and they're very good at saying no, or they say, sorry, this is not a priority for me. And that's what life is about.
Yeah. What would you say some of the biggest differences are from conversations that you've had with people and what you found out and research that the differences are? What is it that makes people more fearful of public speaking compared to maybe one-to-ones or just having to get on a stage? What does it generally come down to from your experience?
I personally think speaking one-on-one is easier
Yeah.
than getting in front of a stage. In front of a stage, you have many people. So that fear of failure is multiplied by however many number of people there is. That's it. So you have, let's say, 20, 30 pairs of eyes staring at you. It is scary. I even get scared at times. What I do is take deep breaths. Whenever our body is scared, and it could be from an animal like a lion attacking you, it could be from an upcoming accident, whatever it is, or public speaking, your body gets into flight or fight mode. And all you need to do, literally all you need to do, is take deep breaths. And we're going to do it right now. So I do the 4-second deep breath rule.
Yep.
So 4-second in, 4-second out. Do it 4 times. That's it. If you literally do that 4 times, your parasympathetic nervous system will tell your body all is well, all is well. And it calms down, your heart stops racing, and all of a sudden you're not nervous. So that's the biggest tip in front of a
Okay.
stage,
Yep.
taking deep breaths. It works. What else? Practice, of course, practice and
Yep.
prep. Nothing beats that. You don't want to be underprepared. You don't want to come on stage and all of a sudden your mind goes blank. You need to have that thing at the back of your mind. I know several people who are scared of going blank, so they actually memorize their first 3-4 words, and they know that if they've memorized that first 3-4 words, they're fine after that.
Yeah.
If you're even scared, you can write it down on your hand, your first 3-4 words, or take a sticky note, and that's okay, because you know that you will not fail. That's another thing we do. Having a bottle of water sometimes helps when you're about to mess up, or your train of thought goes away. Then you're like, pick up your water, think, come back.
Mhm.
I have found, now this tip might not apply to many people, but it works with me, is hand gestures. Whenever I practice with my hand gestures beforehand, it helps me with my memorization as well.
Okay.
Because I link, I'm a visual person, so I link what I'm going to say with how I'm going to react with my hands. So if I'm listing out things like, so today we're going to talk about 3 things, and I do that with my hands, and I automatically, my brain just tells me what those 3 things are because I'm using my hands. So I'm a hands person. I love using them, but use them with purpose. Don't just make a repetitive random movement with your hands. They need to have a purpose. So you need to tell your mind beforehand that I'm going to do this gesture at this moment, and it works.
Yeah. I've never heard of somebody using their hands as a memory, as something to remind yourself of where you are in the speech or what it is. It's a good tip. I've done something similar where you kind of have like 3 or 4 different areas of the room. If you're in a room, right? Okay, this room here, this is about this subject. This is about that subject. So when you look at that side, or you kind of get a bit lost, right? You kind of look to one side, and then it kind of gives you that was about public speaking, or that, yeah. So it kind of reminds you of where to talk about, or what to talk about at what point.
Yeah, that works.
Just going back to the preparation bit for public speaking, how would you break it down for somebody that somebody who does public speaking maybe regularly, that again there is some fear there, or somebody who's new to it, or somebody who just wants to get better at it, because the preparation is key. What sort of tips would you give somebody in terms of what to prepare for and how to?
Preparation has 2 aspects. One is your content, and the other one is your delivery. Of course, you have to start with your content, otherwise, you're not going to speak about something meaningful. So
Yep.
we all start with the content prep. And then we get to a point where we're like, oh my God, it's today in half an hour. I don't have time to practice delivery. And we lose out on this one. And this is where I said, I know we don't have time to practice. So go and let's say do the Orai course, and you will have foundational level of good enough delivery. First thing is content. It's so key. And there are many styles of doing content. It depends on what your audience likes, what the topic is, who you are as a person. We can talk a little bit about both. A lot of people talk about storytelling, for example. That is one thing that you can start implementing in your content. People love stories. Every time, instead of just saying, oh, Apple launched the new OS for the Apple Watch, and it's going to have all these health trackers and fitness stuff. Instead of just being like that, use a story like what Apple does. Do you have a family or loved ones who you're worried about, maybe them falling, maybe something happening to them, or the mobility reducing? Well, now Apple Watch's newest OS system has this feature of mobility and fall detection that allows you as a family member to know if a fall happens within your family. Boom. So they use stories. They have personas in there. They add metaphors. So always do that in your content. That's like the biggest tip. If you're reading back your content and you don't feel stuff, and the only way to feel stuff is through vivid imagery, metaphors, you describing. It is that blue watch that you're gonna wear. And I'm just saying watch. So use visual cues in your content. That's one. Another thing in content I like is structuring. The simplest structure is like a 3-part thing. You're gonna talk about something, break it down into 3, and then have clear transitions of when you're into the next one. And at the end, summarize for people. That's some content stuff that come on the top of my mind.
Yep.
Now, when we go to the delivery side, in delivery, there's like 5, 6, 7 things that you need to be aware of. And those are the areas of feedback that Orai gives. So the first one is your ums and uhs. You need to be mindful of not using them. And it goes beyond just ums and uhs. There's so, there's like, there's there's something like that. There's actually, there's basically, there's so many. These things don't add any weight to your content. So avoid them. There's pacing. Don't talk too fast. Don't talk too slow. Have variation. So parasympathetic nervous system will tell your body all is well. All is well. Maybe at times you go slow because of the topic you're talking about in that presentation. Then sometimes you go faster. So that's pacing. Then comes your confidence. And your confidence is based on a mixture of your awkward pauses, uncertainty, phrases that you might be using, as well as filler words. There's conciseness. Are you being concise and to the point? There's your vocal clarity and enunciation. Are you opening your mouth? Are your words clearly articulated? There's energy, of course. So your tone variation. Are you sounding boring, monotone, flat without any ups and downs in your speech? Or do you go up and down and excite the audience and make them aware of what you're saying? So these are some things that Orai actually gives AI-driven feedback on, but these are a great way to look at and assess yourself if you record yourself as well.
Yeah, they're great areas. They're great areas to break them down now. About the ums and ahs, it goes way further than that. And even to this day, I still know that happens to me. I can't always stop it. It'll happen, but I won't let it affect me in terms of, I won't beat myself up about it. And I know that's one thing that people do is when that does happen, people beat themselves up about things sometimes too much, where it becomes a detriment to them, and it knocks that's one of the things that knocks people's confidence. I know I do it sometimes, and I'll pick up, and like you said at the very beginning, like you can this is being recorded, so we can watch back and we can learn ourselves. Like, oh, I did that there, or I need to improve that. And like again, like you said at the beginning, it's never ending. There is no happy ending. No, we will always be learning. No one's perfect. So, what advice would you give somebody to improve their interviews? And I think this is probably a good time to talk about it as well, because I know unfortunately, there's lots of people around the world that have lost their jobs because of COVID. And, it's something that people will be doing a lot of is having to apply for new positions, new businesses, and maybe new careers. What's your top tips, Danish?
Let's say over Zoom or Teams. Number one is smile. We get so nervous, we get so scared, we get so wrapped up in our content that we forget to smile. But I'm smiling right now. And for those listening to only the audio version, you will know I'm smiling when I'm speaking, because when you smile, your voice just has a different flavor to it, just a different sound to it. So try and smile. It's more pleasant, it's warmer, and it melts away any tension between two parties. So that's the biggest tip. Now, if you're someone who forgets to smile, very simple. Take a sticky note, put a nice big smiley face, and put it right there next to your webcam. You will not forget to smile because you're always looking at that. That's your big tip number one. The other tip is have proper lighting. So for example, with me, I might have had poor lighting, so I've put a light source as well. You can see it. There's a light source here. It allows you to then focus less on, oh, it's hard to see you, I can't see your facial expressions, but now the interviewer can see you very clearly, so they can see how excited you might be, how energetic you are, and that adds to the mix. Because look, I'm not talking about the things that everyone is going to bring. Let's see what is constant. Everyone has a good resume, everyone has great work experiences. That's a given. So I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about what can add a little bit of more flavor, what can help you stand out. So good audio quality, maybe you can buy a $10 mic on Amazon because the audio quality will sound much better. It'll be easier to hear you. Maybe you can get a webcam for $30 and they might be able to see you better. So those are on the technical side.
Yeah, they're good. They're good tips that I think a lot of people probably would overlook. Yeah.
Yeah. Background, don't make it noisy. If it is not a good background, use a virtual background like what I'm doing right now. Totally okay. Find something professional. The same ones that we talked about for public speaking, still apply here. Don't do your ums and uhs.
Yeah.
Don't sound boring, monotone. Don't talk too fast or slow. Have your content ready as well. Have stories. When the interviewer asks you, tell us about the last time you worked in a team like setting and you went through challenges. Use story. Don't just say, oh, last month at my job, there was this team member who had this problem and this is how I solved it. No, use visual elements. Last month was a very challenging month for our team. We had a deadline that was coming up, and our team of 3 people were all working overtime, literally from 8 a.m. in the morning to 9 p.m. at night. Look at that. I'm adding stuff that you can now
Yeah.
start visualizing. It makes a big difference. And it doesn't come just like that to you. You have to work on these skills. I can do this because I've been doing this for years and I teach people on these things. So don't be scared. You can do it as well. You can learn by practicing, by looking what is online, by doing courses, by talking to speech coaches. These are things you can work on and write these tips down. Like these are golden tips that people pay thousands of dollars to learn about.
The way you delivered that as well is you're very encouraging, Danish. I'm also, I
And
feel encouraged myself to, to improve. One of my favorite things that you said there was the smile. It does make a big difference. You're absolutely right. For the people that are listening, they can't see your smile, but you bet your bottom dollar they can hear it. Absolutely. That makes such a difference when you're communicating with people, is having a smile. How would you go further with the questioning piece? Would you prepare for specific questions? Because this is, I personally don't always feel it's the best thing to do, because what happens is your expectation is sometimes you kind of get stuck in your head, right? Okay, they asked me this, they asked me this. And then what happens? You're not always listening to what's actually happening. But that's my personal opinion. You could say, well, you need to have a look at some of the things that you might be asked, maybe about the organization. What would be your view on preparing for specific questions?
100% do them.
Yeah.
We know that there's 80% probability of certain questions coming in, period. What is your strength? What's your weakness? Why do you want this job? What do you like about our company? Why are you moving from your old job? Tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
These are questions that are going to come, 80% guarantee. Why not practice them? It's like literally sitting in an exam room where you know exactly what the questions are going to be and you've already practiced them. So do it. Don't be like that person who's like, nah, I want to sound natural. I want to be impromptu.
That's what
I
I
know
just
my
said.
things. No, you have the questions. You're going into an exam. Practice them. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to argue with you. I think you're right. I never broke it down into that way. There are 80%. You know what 80% of the questions are going to be. So
And don't just practice it yourself.
Yeah.
Practice it with someone else who will give you honest feedback. And how do you get honest feedback? This is also an art. Don't just tell your mom, hey mom, here are 10 questions. Can you ask me? She's like, son, beta, tell me about yourself. Then you answer it. Okay, next question. So why do you want to work here? No, tell her or him, whoever it is, I need feedback. Maybe tell them what you need feedback on after this, listening to this podcast. Tell them you want feedback on whether you sound confident, whether you spoke too fast, whether you had too many arms. To get feedback on, did you smile? Did you forget to smile? Once you tell them that, you're like, you did not smile there. Try again. So getting feedback is an art as well, and how to get it.
Also makes you feel good if you've done something good and someone points it out and you get feedback on it. It helps with your confidence, doesn't it? I suppose we're coming towards the end now. Is there any last minute tips that maybe reflecting back on now through the call or through the podcast, sorry, that you haven't covered that maybe you'd like to just share, whether that's to do with
More,
public speaking or one-to-ones or
more tips. I'm always full of tips.
oh,
When I talk
excellent.
about
Yeah, we love
speaking,
tips. That's what it's all about.
one of the things when you're sitting, either it can be in a meeting room or it can be on a panel or it can be like this.
Yeah.
One trick to do is not to lean back. Our body just gets tired and we often lean back or we slouch like this. Like your shoulders become like this.
I feel like I'm slouching.
I feel like you're slouching. Let's do this together. The way to avoid slouching
Mhm.
is look at your feet. Your feet right now might be like this on the floor.
Yeah.
Put your feet like this.
What crossed them?
Yeah, just cross your feet.
Yeah.
And when you cross your feet and try and put them down, what ends up happening is your
Oh,
spine and your back just becomes straight.
ah,
Then it
yeah.
becomes a little bit uncomfortable to slouch.
Mhm.
Now, you're going to look more involved. You're going to look more confident, which is great. Everyone wants that. You want the other party to think you are excited to be there. You're going to show that. But number two, what it does is when you're not slouching, when your back is straight, you give your lungs enough room to give you air. And when you have enough air, your voice sounds better. Versus when someone is slouching, maybe when like this, what I'm doing, like I'm leaning forward,
Mhm.
if you have a good ear, you'll be able to hear that I'm actually running out of breath. I might sound monotone a little bit. My voice modulation will go away. And at the end of a sentence, when I'm about to lose my breath, I might even have a vocal fry. That's what ends up happening. Or you can just sit straight and you will not feel that.
That's great.
How's that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's good. I did when you as soon as you said it, I was like, I was looking at myself, thinking, what do I look like?
The second and final tip of today is hand gestures. I know I talked about it briefly, but let's go a little bit more into it. For those watching, you'll see what I'm doing, but for those who are listening, I'll just try and describe. When we use hand gestures, it's very boring. Most people use boring hand gestures. If not, they use none. Always use hand gestures, it's very impactful. And use hand gestures that fill up the screen, like what I'm doing right now. Don't just use tiny hand gestures like pointing on your fingers, like you people count 1 2 3 on their fingers. Instead, use your entire square that you have on your video. So 1 2 3. Today we're going to talk about three things. Look at my hands right now, they're filling up the space. I'm getting your attention. Today we're going to talk about three things. I'm taking up the screen. My hands are as big as my head right now. I'm bringing them right up in front, and you can do that. You can bring the audience in if you're doing a virtual present. Okay, everybody come back in, come back in. Everyone who's there, come back in. Use hand gestures that are purposeful, that add meaning and add message to your presentation. Don't be scared.
What are some of the hand gestures that people do? I'm a bit of a hand guy. It's one of the things that I really used to have to work on a lot when I first started presenting was my hand gestures. It was very animated, but I think it was to the point where some of it was nerves. It just became a little bit erratic at times. I know it's
Yes.
one thing that I definitely had to work on. Even now, a lot of it comes down from passion as well when you're talking.
Yes. And you have to be mindful of that. So there's something called too much hand gestures or erratic movement. And the only way to know that is by recording yourself,
Yeah.
literally. Record yourself and watch back, and you're like, what? I was using my hands that many times? What was I doing there? That does not add any meaning. So you need to avoid doing too much hand gestures that don't do anything. Now, when you said what are the hand gestures, it all depends on what you're trying to say. Let's say you're talking about the time and you're like, we need to be here at 7 a.m. Maybe point to your watch. Think of it like a performance. Let's say you're talking about something big. Make a big hand gesture with your hand. If you're talking about something tiny, go tiny.
Mm.
We're talking about yesterday. Talk about yesterday with your hands pointing back. We're talking about looking forward. Make your hand and go forward. So, what to do in your hand gestures? Whenever you're saying something, just ask yourself, if an actor were to act this out without saying words, how would they do that? And then all these hand gestures will start coming in your mind.
I like that question. A bit like charades. Well, a little bit.
Yeah, exactly like that.
Yeah.
Simple, right?
Great tips, Danish. Great tips. Even me, who's somebody who's done a lot of presenting, I could still take things away from some of the things that you said there. It's excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, these are executive level tips that you get in the boardroom only. You pay thousands of dollars per hour to learn some of these things. And our goal is to democratize that and make everyone a great communicator.
Yeah. We've come to an end today, and I just want to firstly say thank you very much for your time and the valuable tips that you've shared today. I'd say this is probably one of those episodes that we've had the most tips, so many different tips, and it's been quite exciting. And I think a lot of people will hopefully get something from this, especially people that are maybe not so confident in public speaking or one-to-one speaking. That even the gestures that you just shared just now, fantastic little tips there. Yeah, really impressive. For those that maybe don't go into the links in the descriptions, if it is on YouTube or on podcasts, where can people find you if they wanted to connect with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. And you can find us on YouTube channel as well, where we talk about even more tips.
We'll put the links in the descriptions for people to go onto. And for anybody that is listening, that really does want to improve their communication in any level, go over to Danish's app, Orai.
It's on Apple, it's on Android. You don't have a smartphone, no worries. You can go on the website, app.orai.com. And that is Orai, Orai.
Danish, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome.